You can see though some schools will accept it for credit for a particular course that applies towards your major. Others, it might only be elective credit that might not apply towards a major. In some cases, you can also gain placement towards higher level courses for exam or for moving forward on those exams. So this would be, example here would be AP Spanish. The student takes AP Spanish, and that might place them in a higher level Spanish at the university level. They might not, rather than starting in a 101 or a 102, they might be able to start in a higher level based on their score in that class.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Our next form of college credit that's offered through D303 is what we call articulated credit. So for articulated credit, basically what you're looking to do is you're taking a high school level course, hopefully earning an A or a B in that particular course, and then subsequently attending either ECC or Waubonsie Valley. And upon your enrollment at ECC or Waubonsie Valley, you would then be able to take the credits earned in high school and have them count as proficiency credit at the community college, which then allows you to take a course, an advanced level course, because you've now satisfied the prereq for that particular course. So for example, on our next slide, we have courses that are articulated with ECC. So for example, the introduction to business is a clean one-to-one course that's articulated with ECC for 3 credit hours. And then our business law and ethics, the 2 courses together are articulated for 3 credit hours at Elgin Community College. So sometimes you're required to take 2 high school classes that will then subsequently, after earning an A or a B, then translate to 3 credit hours at Elgin Community College. So these are examples of the courses that are articulated with ECC. If you look at our course offering book, it's linked to both the East and the North High School websites. Our course offering book has a complete listing of all of our articulated courses with Elgin Community College. I believe the next slide also then shows a Fox Valley course, another off-campus opportunity that's available to our juniors and senior students is Fox Valley Career Center. So our Fox Valley Career Center offers courses like, career and tech courses like automotive tech 1 and 2, cosmetology 1 and 2, criminal justice. We have BNAT courses, fire science courses, a litany of computer tech courses, and one of them, the web development course, is articulated with ECC. So this would be an example of taking an off-campus class and then having that articulate to ECC. So, and again, you can find all of those in our course offering book on the East and the North High School websites. So by contrast, dual credit then, the big difference here, the big change here is that these are actually college courses. So the AP classes and the articulated classes that we've discussed already, these are high school level courses that you take. AP, you have to take an exam to earn the credit. Articulated courses, you have to earn an A or B to get the credit, and then attend ECC or Waubonsie Valley. Dual credit, you are actually now taking a college level course while still in high school. So the key here is that you are creating now an official college transcript, okay, which then you can take with you to other colleges and universities after completing your time at East or North High School. So That's
Mr.
the
Gill,
key. Yep.
along with that, I'm monitoring the question and answers. Can you expand a little bit about the articulated credit and how that transfers? I know you explained the A and the B, but can you talk about the proficiency and whether or not they can take that to another institution?
So that would only go to the institution in which it's articulated with. So if it's articulated with ECC, you can only take that credit to ECC. So the high school transcript that demonstrates your A or your B in that course or courses, depending on what the agreement is, would then transfer to ECC for proficiency credit. Okay, so the articulated credit is with that specific institution.
Thank you. And then another question that is in the chat is, if we are still remote learning in the fall, will classes be live or self-taught like online? And regardless of the learning modality the district is in at any given time, we will continue to offer both AP and dual credit and articulated courses.
So were you just clarifying that for everyone that we're going to continue? Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for the dual credit again, currently our current dual credit students are taking classes through ECC. Their classes are currently remote. They're virtual with some cases where they're going into the building for lab experiences. I hope that kind of clarifies that that's what's currently happening. And then obviously if we're in a similar circumstance next year, hopefully not, but if we are, then I'm assuming that ECC would follow that same format. And Mr. Lopez, obviously you can expand on that if there's anything else.
Yeah, I think I would just go ahead and say exactly what you just mentioned, that at this moment in time, we don't know exactly what our modality is going to be like in next fall, but we do expect to know more as we're heading into the spring semester, most likely around the months of February and March.
So one of the great benefits, obviously, to dual credit is the opportunity, especially if you're a sophomore currently looking to join this full-time dual credit program. This then gives you an opportunity to earn an associate's degree along with your high school diploma after completing the 2-year full-time dual credit program. So clearly, great benefit of all these options, advanced placement, articulated credit, dual credit, is it's a big time saver. It's a big money saver for a lot of students. So that's why we certainly advocate and provide these opportunities. As far as transferability is concerned, the courses that are taken as dual credit are governed by the Illinois Articulation Initiative. And as you can see with this agreement, there's more than 100 colleges and universities that participate in this. So if you're staying in state, the likelihood of these credits transferring to that school is very high. If you're planning to attend an institution outside of Illinois, then what you can use is our Transferology resource. That's what we highly recommend students make use of, just to get a sense of which classes that they're taking and whether or not they're going to be accepted by the school they intend to transfer to after completing their dual credit program. Mr. Lopez, if there's something else that we should mention here, I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to that as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think the few things that I would add is, as Mr. Gill just mentioned, a couple of resources. Transferology.com is heavily used by students as they're kind of deciding where to attend after high school. It also allows students and families to look at institutions outside of the state. Primarily, that's probably one of the best sources of information for families, but also a couple other things that I would recommend is we do have those types of resources available on our website where students can go and take a look at some of the most commonly common institutions that students transfer to out of state, but also in state. There's all sorts of ways to figure out exactly how individual courses will transfer for the equivalent credit, but also specialized agreements that we may have that allow students to pursue, like a 2+2 agreement, which will allow a student to more feasibly complete a bachelor's degree in 4 years. And then I guess another resource just to keep in mind is that four-year institutions' own websites, their own websites have transfer information, transfer tools, guides that does also include information from out-of-state community colleges like Elgin Community College.
Okay, thank you very much for that additional information. So our next slide basically is just demonstrating that we do have 3 partners in dual credit. We have 3 community colleges that we work with. Our College of DuPage is our newest partner in, this is our first year running a fashion marketing and merchandising course with and through the College of DuPage. That is a course that's taught here on our campus on the at D303 campus. I believe it's at North this year, but it is an option that is our newest option and our newest partner in College of DuPage. Our largest partnership is with Elgin Community College, and through this partnership, we have basically 3 types of dual credit opportunities. One of which is taking these college courses right here on your campus at East or North High Schools. Another option is taking part-time, taking classes part-time. So having a partial East or North High School schedule, and then in the afternoon taking some courses on the ECC campus. Those could be general education in nature, courses like, say, Political Science 150, which would be our civics course, History 151 or 152, which would be the equivalent of our Modern American History course. Just some examples. And then, of course, you also have career and tech education courses that you can take in a part-time way in various areas like culinary basic nursing, things like that. And then the full-time option is either a 1-year program for current juniors going to be seniors, and then the 2-year program for our current sophomores going into their junior year. And then lastly, you see our 3rd partner is Waubonsee Community College. Through Fox Valley, we do have the Auto Tech 1 and 2 and our fire science programs that can earn dual credits through the Fox Valley program to Waubonsee Community College.
So I think I'd like to stop here so we can answer some questions before we move on to the in-high school options, if that's okay. So we have a question about meeting the ECC placement requirement by taking the SAT, and how will the scores be sent to ECC. So we'll cover that question in just a little bit when we discuss how to apply and that process. And then the next question is there a difference between proficiency credit and regular credit at ECC? So maybe Mr. Lopez can jump in here. But the main difference is that with dual credit, students are producing a high school transcript along with a college transcript simultaneously. With the articulated credit, a student at the end of that course has a high school transcript with their grade to show that they have achieved the outcomes of those courses. And then if they enroll, if and when they enroll with ECC within 27 months of their graduation, then they will receive that proficiency credit. Mr. Lopez, is there anything that you would like to add on to that one?
Yeah, and I think I see another question in regards to whether or not that would eventually transfer over. So I think one of the other differences to kind of note is that with the proficiency credit, you're simply receiving credit, and the way that would be presented in your college transcript is with the designation of CR versus a letter grade, which is very important, because then to get to your question, the question about if someone was to come to ECC, complete a degree, would that credit then be honored at the 4-year institution? And the answer is most likely no, for the reasons that based on the kind of a compact agreements that are in place between institutions and higher ed, they're looking to assess that course by a letter by it being presented as a letter grade on the college transcript.
Thank you. And then another question is, what do fees look like for dual credit? And we will explain that when we talk about our dual credit agreement. And it does vary depending on the program that students enroll in. And then, are we allowed to choose only transferable courses from ECC to 4 years of college? And we'll talk, Mr. Lopez can expand a little bit more on this with the Illinois Articulation Initiative. We want to make sure that we're setting up all of our students for success in their post-secondary lives and careers. So we want to make sure that when students are going through the process of their course planning, that they do choose courses that will transfer to an institution of their choosing if that is part of their post-secondary plan. And Elgin Community College is very good with the academic advisors working with our dual credit students along with our high school counselors to ensure that that type of course planning and post-secondary planning does take place. Mr. Lopez, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think the only occasion in which a student would not have to select transferable courses is in the part-time career and technical education program, which is very much aligned to our current, what we refer to as applied science degrees, Associate of Applied Science degrees, which are intended more or less to be able to ensure that a student is completing post-secondary education that may lead to credentials, industry credentials preferably, to then transition directly into the workforce.
Thank you. And then I think one more we can answer right now. Is there any impact for receiving college credits as it pertains to receiving scholarships that are for first year students only? Mr. Gill or Mr. Peters, can you talk a little bit about your students' experience with this? Or Mr. Lopez?
Yeah, I can speak to that. We've had several students go through the program, the dual credit, full-time dual credit program, and they have been able to enter four-year schools upon graduation from high school and enter as freshmen, and they're still eligible for freshman scholarships because the courses, the dual credit courses they took while they were still in high school. So they're counted as freshmen, as opposed to courses that they may take after high school, which would potentially cause them to be considered a transfer student.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing to also just, one of the things that universities, colleges look for and to make that determination is based on the student's high school graduation date. So as Mr. Peters mentioned, dual credit, just like AP credit that may have been earned while in high school, is used to determine a student's academic standing once they get to that university, but not their enrollment status, which is always based on that high school graduation date. They're going to be coming in as freshman students and therefore eligible to compete for any type of freshman scholarships available.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can move on to the next slide.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our in-high school options. As Mr. Gill started to talk about, we do have several in-high school options. We've English 101, 102. We have that each course is a semester. You take them in combination to make it a year-long course. This is through ECC. It is aligned with their curriculum, and it's available at both high schools. The teachers have are qualified and worked with the ECC to make sure that the curriculums are aligned. Hospitality 101 and Speech 101 are both fairly new to the program. We've had those for a year, and we'd love to get some students into those courses. We've had a limited interest in it, but they're both very good classes. Speech is taught by an East instructor. So if any North students were to take it, they would, well, in past years, they would travel to East to take it. But based on what we've learned this year about Zoom and classes in this manner, Next year, we may be able to have the students Zoom in rather than travel across the river to take that class from the East instructor. Similarly, Accounting 100 is taught at North, and by a North instructor, and East students would come here for that class. So we could probably even manage to arrange that as a video, Zoom into that class for those students, at least part of the time for that class. So those things that we're going to look at for those. The fashion class also taught here at North, more hands-on, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult to zoom in, but it's still something we can take a look at. That course, not a ECC course, as was mentioned earlier. That one's in conjunction with College of DuPage, and students would earn their dual credit or a transcript from COD. For these exams, there's testing requirements. Students either need to take a placement exam or have a qualifying score on ACT, SAT, or PSAT. And the guidance counselors at either school would help you figure out if you meet those requirements or if you need to take the testing. The last bullet there about college policies and procedures that need to be followed. These are college level courses. They're monitored by the colleges. So attendance in these courses is much more strict than in a regular high school course. There are attendance requirements. And if students miss too many days, they can be dropped and not receive credit for the course. So it's important that students are able to attend regularly to be involved in these courses. As far as communication and records, the FERPA, the Federal Education Records Protection Act, does apply, and communication in these areas would be directly with the students as opposed to going to the parents like many other courses. In our next slide, we kind of talk about some of the part-time dual credit we have. We do have two different options, as Mr. Gill mentioned, and the first one I'll talk about here is the CTE option. As Mr. Gill mentioned, we've got a couple examples: culinary arts, entrepreneurship. BNAT is a very popular program. We also have students take the criminal justice, digital forensics, fire science, welding, and there's several other programs that students can take within this area. Typically, a student takes 2 courses at a time each semester. They can either do this for a year or 2 years. And at the end, they're working towards some type of a certification or lost the word there. We'll go with certificate though, in the program for that they can use to move on within the working world. To get into these classes, students do need to have a 2.0 minimum GPA, but that is converted to a 4-point scale from our 5, and that's unweighted. So we would work with the students to make sure they have that. Some of the programs then do have testing requirements. For example, the BNAT program, the students do need to take the PSB entrance exam, and some of the other programs, reading or writing or potentially even math scores are required for the students to get into these. These courses do count towards high school graduation elective requirements. In addition to the CTE part-time program, we also have general education programs available. Probably one of the more popular programs here is the Japanese program. We have several students that take this program. They take Japanese 101 one semester, 102 another semester. That is an evening course, as opposed to the other courses. Mr. Gill mentioned some being government, U.S. history, there's also art appreciation, music appreciation, intro to business. These courses typically would be in the afternoon, so students would attend similar to the CTE part-time program. Students attend in the morning, and then they attend ECC in the afternoon. Typically, courses start after 12:30, allowing them plenty of time to go up to ECC, provided the courses are on campus. There are placement testing requirements for these courses in reading, writing, or math, depending on the particular course that they're taking. And these do and can qualify for specific high school graduation requirements, such as the U.S. history requirement or the government requirement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peters. The next two slides, we're going to just kind of review some of the full-time dual credit pathways. You have your junior and senior pathways. This slide is reviewing our junior pathway. So in this scenario, students would be attending their last 2 years of high school, through the ECC campus. So each of the semesters would entail 4 to 5 classes each. Their first semester of both pathways, you're going to take your College 101 Student Success course. That's a specific requirement of the program, is to take that course during the first semester, be it the junior or senior pathway. The junior pathway is the program that results in an associate's in applied arts or applied sciences. So this 2-year program is the one that would result in that. The senior pathway does not necessarily result in an associate's degree. Obviously, if you were to continue to attend ECC another year, then you could subsequently earn an associate's degree, but that dual credit program for the seniors does not result in that associate's in arts or associate's in science degree. For the junior pathway, students will have an academic advisor the entire time in their program. Their academic advising will be basically their course selection with their counselor. The plans are then shared back with the high school to make sure that their ECC advisor and the courses selected will continue to meet high school graduation requirements as well. Again, the students are completing all courses on the ECC campus. Despite that, however, students can continue to participate in high school activities as their college courses are going to permit. So that's, you kind of keep an eye on the courses that one is taking and the activities or sports that you're choosing to participate in. There may be some conflicts there, so that's something that you would be keeping an eye on as you select courses for each of the semesters while in the program. But there is it's not like you're excluded from participation. Being mindful of eligibility, though, you do want to make sure that you have 5 courses for IHSA eligibility, because the student does need to take and pass 5 courses in order to remain eligible for IHSA sports. So just keep that in mind if you're an athlete considering a full-time program. The senior pathway on the next slide, basically same concept, it's just an abbreviated program. So for those of you who are juniors, I noticed today was the first day of junior course selection, so I did notice that a number of you have expressed interest already in dual credit programs, so that's wonderful news to hear. For you, juniors out there or students who are considering this down the road, this program allows you up to 30 transferable credits. Again, you're going to be taking the College 101 course your first semester. This particular program, I would say, is more, you're hitting the what's considered kind of your core classes that would kind of set you up nicely to transfer to a different college or university if that is your goal, or if you're looking to continue on at ECC for another year, it'll set you up nicely for a second year in college. Again, all classes on the campus, and again, if you're in this full-time 1-year senior pathway, you may still continue to participate in high school sports and activities. I think one of the things we should probably point out now for the full-time program is we mentioned some of the requirements already. While the CTE program is a 2.0 GPA requirement, the full-time And the full-time program is a 3.0 GPA requirement. And as far as the cut scores are concerned, just to share those real quick, for the PSAT or the SAT, in order to qualify for the program, for placement purposes, you would need to earn a 480 on the English reading writing section. And for math, you would need a 530. For the ACT, the equivalent there is a 19 for English and a 19 for reading. And then the equivalent for math would be a 22. So these are the cut scores that you would need to qualify for the program. Now, if you don't have those marks right now, then you would then take the placement exams at ECC and earn their placement scores that Mr. Peters had alluded to earlier when talking about the CTE part-time program.
A couple things. One thing I would add real quick too is, since you're with us at this meeting tonight, I'm presuming that you have also been on both either the North or the East website, where we've got the application and testing guides and the student guides. The numbers that Mr. Gill just gave are in those, in case you didn't write them down as he was going through them. So all of that testing information, all the cut scores that are needed for those available in those guides. One of the things that I want to point out real quick too, Mr. Gill mentioned the first day of junior registration was today. That's for East students. Just we're doing things a little bit different. At North, we started with freshmen. Juniors, you'll have your opportunity in January, so don't panic that you haven't received an appointment yet. Expectations, high school versus college. There is a difference, as we've kind of alluded to already, between the dual credit courses and regular high school courses, and that's whether you're on campus at ECC or if you're in one of the D303 buildings. As I mentioned earlier, the FERPA law applies, which really does limit parent access to what's happening here. We do have students sign a waiver so that the teachers can continue to communicate and parents can access grades. But it does change things. It kind of ups the game and reminds us that these students are taking college level courses, and that communication with the university, especially for the full-time students, is going to be with the students, as opposed to what we may be a little bit more expecting and used to, where it's going directly to the parents. The community college is very good at communicating with the high schools for the full-time programs, communicate directly with Mr. Gill and myself, and then we try and relay as much information as we can to the students and parents at our level. I like to point out the schedule as well. The courses, especially for the on ECC's campus courses, they're not always going to match the D303 calendar. There may be days where we have off that you still have to go to school at ECC, or the other way around, that you have to go based on ECC's schedule. May not match, as Mr. Gill talked about, also may not match the D303 daily schedule, where we dismiss in a regular year at 2:20, 2:21. You may have classes beyond that time frame at ECC. As he talked about too, it doesn't mean you can't be involved in high school athletics or activities. We've got plenty of students that are involved in different programs. It just means that you need to be careful. You need to work with your advisor or your coach and talk about what days you may have class a little bit later, and they're going to be pretty accommodating. We do like to point out physical education as just a real quick point of interest. For the full-time program, PE is a self-directed program. This seems to be a hang-up for students every year. They get very involved in their other courses and kind of forget about the PE and don't make the number of visits to the fitness center or meet their weekly goals. And so it's something that we do like to point out, that you've got to be prepared and ready for that, to be self-directed in that area. And just the last thing on there, Google versus D2L, two different systems. As you're familiar, we use Google in D303. The desire to learn is what Elgin Community College uses. Students have to be ready to monitor and straddle both systems so that they can communicate with their instructors here and their instructors at ECC. And now Mr. Gill.
Some of the soft skills that are necessary for a successful experience in dual credit. You can see our listed here on the slide. So time management is critical for success. So adopting routines that allow for that success to happen is definitely something that we highly recommend that students come equipped with these time management skills and know that adopting routines are going to be critical for their success. Their communication skills and their ability to advocate, ask questions as they need to is also very important for their success. And part of the communication skills is kind of the daily discipline of reading your emails. That is a huge hurdle for some students, is just kind of having the daily discipline of reading the emails from their ECC email account, as well as their their D303 student account. Lots of information gets communicated to you by Mr. Lopez and Mrs. Del Real from ECC, by your professors. And then obviously a lot of that communication is also coming from Mr. Peters and myself, so that we can keep you connected with all the updates that you're going to need as you participate in the dual credit program. So the daily routine of reading emails, checking your emails, probably more than once a day, is definitely recommended, regardless of who you are and where you attend. That's just a daily skill, a soft skill. And then adopting the routines and managing your time appropriately. This being a dual credit college course, you don't have the same kind of in-person class time that you would at the high school level. So with that in mind, you definitely need to earmark time that's outside of class that you're going to use to work on your reading for the next class, and so on. So just keeping that in mind, that with less in-person class time at the college level, you're definitely going to need to adopt a routine that works for you and manage your time in a way that allows you to meet all of your daily assignments and weekly assignments.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. So I want to go ahead and just take a couple minutes to talk a little bit more about some of the academic support services that students are going to have access to by participating specifically in the dual credit classes at ECC. I think I saw a question about academic advising, so let me go ahead and start there. In specific to academic advising, after students have gone through the application testing process and have been accepted into the program by way of a decision that comes through the high school and ECC, then the full-time students are going to be receiving information on how to prepare, how to schedule, and obviously what to expect in their one-on-one sessions with academic advisors. So academic advising does not occur until a student has been accepted into the program. We have a few things in place, communications in place, that we will be communicating to the family and student to welcome them on, most likely through a virtual presentation, very similar to this. But the academic advising then takes care of selecting students' classes specifically for their first fall semester, if they're coming into the 2-year program. If they're coming into the 1-year program, classes will be selected for both the fall and spring semester of their senior year. Those juniors are going to be looking to then have at least one advising session per semester from there on out, to give them the opportunity to go ahead and make modifications as necessary. Those academic advising sessions will result in an academic plan, which is then shared back with the high school, in this case, Mr. Peters and Mr. Gill, for further review and to ensure that the priority is given to ensuring that the students are completing their high school graduation requirements. One other system that we have in place, which we refer to as Spartan Alert, also commonly refer across campuses as an early alert system, is used by faculty to kind of send us notifications, send our staff notifications about a student's progress or lack of, asking us to follow up with students specifically on potentially attendance or missing assignments or low scores on quizzes and grades. And so that is the information I think Mr. Peters was referencing, and is one of the pieces of information that we share directly with high schools right away. And we ask the parents also receive a copy of that. But then we follow up with students very much directly and intentionally on our part, as well as we ask that the high schools do so as well. And that goes for both the full-time and part-time students. And then we have obviously students in dual credit would have access to the tutoring center and the math lab. We also have a writing lab as well for those students who would be taking English composition or any course really that is assigning a writing assignment, which is going to be kind of the norm. As you transition into college, you're going to be expecting to write many papers, depending on the discipline or topic at hand. And then I think just again, a couple other things to just note is that as you're becoming a dual credit student, and hopefully we're going to be able to welcome you physically on campus next fall, is that you are open to join any club or organization at ECC. The one thing that unfortunately currently is not available for students to participate in is the athletics, because students in college do have to be, according to the NJCAA regulations, they have to be high school graduates. But we've had very good success with students joining organizations, running for board. We've had students lead boards, and currently our student trustee at the college is a former dual credit student. So a lot of great things for students to be able to go ahead and do and get involved at the campus.
So what we have here on this slide is our registration process for those interested in our full and part-time options and our in-school options. So basically, the main thing to take from this slide is that the signed dual credit program agreement is what will initiate this entire application process for a dual credit program, regardless of the variety of the type of the program that you're applying for. After your counselor receives the signed agreement, then the next step, the counselor can walk you through the online application. The online application guide is linked to our website. On the East website, it's under dual credit and off-campus offerings. Mr. Peters, I don't know, is that under your course selection part of your website at North?
All the information for this is under our dual credit. There's a tab for dual credit in the CCR website.
Okay, so we both have a similar tab like that on our website, so that you can look at this a little bit more closely to see exactly what courses are available for part-time, what programs for CTE are available for part-time, that kind of thing. And then after the agreement is turned in, after the online application has been completed, then basically we're looking to make sure that all placement exams, if necessary, meaning you're only taking the placement exams if you have not met it through the PSAT scores, SAT scores, or ACT scores that we mentioned before. And again, as Mr. Peters pointed out, those cut scores are listed in the application guide, so you will know for sure if there's a placement exam that needs to be taken. Our deadline for placement exams is listed here on our slide for the 26th of February. And then after that, ECC will then initiate information about their welcome night and their new student orientation for the full and part-time students. And then there's a similar process for our in-high school students. It's slightly different because of the location.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. So now we're going to spend our last few minutes talking about some questions. So I see that there are 15 open questions in the chat, so I'll just read them off and then I'll ask one of you to answer them as we can. So the first question is, what is the process to take a meeting with an ECC advisor? Mr. Lopez, do you want to talk about that process a little bit?
Sure. So like I mentioned earlier, after a decision has been made in approving a student's admission to the full-time program, at the welcome night that we were just referencing, which will most likely occur mid-March, we will be specifically bringing on board an academic advisor to talk about kind of logistics in terms of how does a student go about scheduling an academic advising appointment, but also how to prepare for the academic advising to ensure that the student is ready with specific questions that are going to get them to hopefully the academic plan that they desire. So again, our staff at the dual credit office is going to help students kind of navigate that process. We will be sending out specific communications about the instructions, also letting the schools know how students are going about making their appointments and who has completed appointments by certain times in our deadlines.
Thank you. The next question is, will a student's 504 carry over for the dual credit courses? So I'm wondering, Mr. Gill, if you might be able to talk a little bit about what that looks like at the building level and students working with their case manager.
So the students who have a 504 or an IEP, their 504 would be sent over by the school psychologist, and then as far as an IEP, our case managers. Basically, you're working with an ADA coordinator at the college campus to see what accommodations can be carried over to the college level courses. So that becomes your contact person on the college campus is the ADA coordinator.
Thank you. The next question is it possible to do full-time dual credit, the one-year program as a junior and not do any dual credit during senior year? And we've designed the program, the one-year program specifically for seniors so that they can earn that first year of their associate's degree before moving on to their post-secondary plans. So I don't know, Mr. Gill or Mr. Peters, do you want to talk a little bit more about that and why we've designed it to be a senior one-year option?
Yeah, we've had some students that have started the program and have backed out after a semester or a year. So it is possible, but they would need to start as the 1 year. And it's if they don't complete or continue the second year, the senior year, they're losing out on the one, like you said, the ability to earn the associate's degree. And there's some continuity issues in terms of coming back to courses here because of what they would have already have taken at ECC. There's some overlap that could create a problem in putting the schedule together. But students really, they're going to want to commit to 2 years if they're interested in it.
Thank you. The next question is, if my daughter scores high enough in AP language junior year, will she have to take English 101 within the Accelerate College program? So we have students register for the English 101, so they have that spot held in their schedule. But as soon as the AP scores do come in, then we work with ECC to make sure that the appropriate course at the next level is scheduled. And the next question is, can a student take an elective class such as arts at ECC? Yes, absolutely. So those are some of our part-time options. So one example is art appreciation. So all of the courses available to students that we have approved with ECC are in the dual credit handbook.
And Melissa, can I just add one thing
Sure.
to that?
Uh-huh.
I don't know if the question was probably, can I take like a drawing or ceramics class? Those classes would not be available because they would not be falling within a specific CTE program of study or degree or certificate
Correct.
based on kind of the programs that are leading students into dual credit.
Yeah, so the options that are available are the ones that are listed in our handbook. Okay, the next question is, where can I find out if a college accepts the credit? Mr. Lopez, do you want to talk a little bit about that one?
Sure. I think the first source that we would point students and families to is to go ahead, if you haven't already, created a Transferology account. It's completely free. It's like Mr. Peters was and Mr. Gill were noting earlier today. It's essentially a national database that schools, universities have participated to go ahead and kind of input their courses, and the system itself through agreements has been able to help students to kind of determine how classes transferred from one institution to the next. So in this case, when you go on it, it's very user-friendly. You would say, I'm planning to take classes at LG Community College this semester, and then you go through the courses, and essentially you can go ahead and tell it to give you or tell you how classes are going to be transferring to that said institution, or just in general, what institutions, in a specific region or state. The other source that I would point students to is our own website. We have a transfer site that has a lot of information, a lot of transfer guides and tools, so students get familiar with that. And I think the third, which is very common for students not to kind of understand how those things work as they're coming into higher education, is that for students going into the full-time program, you will have your opportunity to go ahead and work directly with an academic advisor to ensure that you're getting the guidance that you need. And the last resource would be going to those four-year institutions' own websites. Each website has a place on their site that has transfer guides and transfer tools, which is also inclusive of community colleges in state and out of state.
Thank you. The next question is there a list anywhere for courses at ECC that also fulfill high school requirements? So some of these are outlined in our course offering book as well as the dual credit handbook. So for example, English 101 and English 102 do fulfill the high school graduation requirement, do help fulfill the high school graduation requirement. And then Math 102 is another general education course that counts as a math credit. So, and then the full-time program as well, all of the courses that students take support the fulfilling of their high school graduation requirements.
Yeah, I would definitely direct people to our appendix in the course offering book website. That will, a lot of the appendix will kind of articulate exactly which classes are meeting high school requirements. That appendix has been expanded from previous years to include that information.
I would also add that students can always talk to their school counselor as well if they have any questions of whether that's going to fit that graduation requirement.
Thanks. And then the next question is SAT score transfer. So I'm not sure exactly what the rest of that question was supposed to be, but the SAT scores that students take at the high schools, they will transfer over to ECC. So students have to earn the 480 in the reading and then the 530 for the math.
If that question is about getting the SAT scores to ECC, that is something that we at the high school can help facilitate as well. We have access to students' SAT scores, and we can share those directly with the school, with ECC, so that they have the scores and know what that the student achieved a minimum score.
Thanks. And then the next question is, what do the PE requirements look like with the pandemic? Mr. Gill or Mr. Peters, do you want to talk about what some of our students are doing this year?
So obviously they're not going to the ECC campus to fulfill those requirements. So in lieu of that, they've been working with the instructor to log. They're basically doing a virtual exercise log with their instructor to, so those virtual, the log that all their entries will count as visits. So instead of visiting the campus, they're doing virtual logs and communicating that exercise and that information with their instructor on a regular basis.
Thanks. The next question is at ECC, can a senior student take summer classes at ECC? So in terms of dual credit, so summer courses through ECC are part of their dual enrollment classes where students can register and enroll for those courses on their own at the family's expense. And then if they are wanting to use those courses as high school credit, then they can go through the process established at the building. And the exception to this would be for some students who are in the full-time program, are because of the nature of the degree in their coursework, some students end up needing to take a summer course to fulfill their degree requirement. And then in that case, they follow the same procedures as with our dual credit program. And then the next question is, if a student cannot participate in physical education for medical reasons, how is that substituted? So Mr. Gill or Mr. Peters, can you speak to that one?
If a student's got a medical exemption for PE at the high school, that's a state requirement. So if they're exempted from that at the high school, they would also be exempted from it at the in the dual credit program. So they would take a different course to maintain those credits.
Thanks. And then the next question, for people unable to go in person, what will the exams look like? So last spring when we were remote, students did have the opportunity to take their placement exams in a remote environment. And then the next question is, would full-time at ECC put Compass Academy out of the question, or could you do both? Students can absolutely enroll in both places because we would personally design a schedule that meets the needs of each student. So if a student is wanting to access Compass Academy, they can enroll as a student there and participate in the full-time dual credit program as well. So an example that I can give that's somewhat related to this is we have a student who is participating in our Project Synergy program, as well as being enrolled as a full-time dual credit student who will graduate at the end of this year with their associates completed, along with fulfilling all the requirements of the Project Synergy program. And then the next question is, are the placement exams in person at ECC? Typically in past years that has been the case, but with COVID-19, it has been an opportunity for students to take the exams remotely as well.
Mr. Lopez, is that all of the exams, or is the PSB for the BNAT program, does that need to be in person?
Great question. Yes. So, and also for the other placement exams, in the event that a student doesn't have access to taking those placement exams remotely, there is limited on-campus testing opportunities that they would have to arrange with the help of the testing staff. But yes, to your question, Mr. Peters, the PSB exam, which is a requirement for students who are looking to enter the Basic Nursing Assistant Training Program, does have to be in person. And those exams are scheduled out throughout the month. And there's information in the application guide to allow student and family to kind of plan accordingly. Essentially, you would go on the site, you identify a date, you would want to register to take the exam.
Thank you. The next question is, what would be the cost of part-time and full-time dual credit? So the full-time dual credit program is a student fee of $200 a month, which families pay and which includes textbooks. And so the district pays tuition on behalf of students. So the $200 a month pays for textbooks, and then the district pays for the other portion of tuition. And then for in-high school courses, there is a course fee of $50 per course. And then for part-time students, it depends on the courses and how many courses students are taking. And those are all outlined in our dual credit agreements.
To put that in perspective, I believe students are paying about 50% or less of what it would cost if you were taking those classes and paying full price through ECC.
And then the next question is, when should we talk to our counselor about part-time dual credits? I would respond anytime that you can meet with your counselor would be a great time to have that conversation. And I know that both buildings are beginning to step through the course planning process as well. The next question is, are ECC advisors only for full-time, or will part-time students also be working with the advisors? Mr. Lopez, can you speak a little bit to that one?
Yeah, at the current time, academic advising is only available to the full-time students, but we are working to figure out how to be able to go ahead and offer that to part-time students. I'm not exactly sure if that would be by the incoming cohort of fall 2021, but that currently is our goal.
Thank you. And then how does a student schedule a placement exam?
I can go ahead and answer that real quick. So the information for how a student would go about registering for an exam is included in the application guide. But essentially, after a student completes the application, they will receive a letter from ECC, which is also in an email, letting the student know that they have to then move forward using their ECC ID number that is included in the letter or email to set up their Access ECC portal, set up their ECC email address, and then go into the site specifically. So that is ECC site. And it's essentially kind of an online registration form that they fill out. And then someone from the testing center responds with next steps.
Thank you. The next question is the tuition or fees and cost the same for all ECC students? So it depends with the courses and or programs that students are participating in. And additionally, the fees are further reduced for students who have a fee waiver. The next question is, on the high school transcript, will dual credit courses be weighted as honors or will it be standard? Dual credit courses are honors weight. And then a question of, if a student completes over 15 college credit hours, are they still eligible for freshman scholarships at a four-year institution, even though they may start their post-secondary career as a sophomore? Yes, because their 15 college credit hours puts them at a sophomore of academic standing, but they're still considered a new enrollee, a new student. Can you still take world language courses in the full-time dual credit program? Yes, we want to make sure that students are fulfilling not only the degree requirements, but then have the opportunity to engage in electives that they would like to pursue. The next question is, you mentioned how it wouldn't be a good idea to go from full-time to part-time. Would that be the same for part-time junior to full-time senior? Mr. Peters or Mr. Gill, do you want to talk about that?
We've actually got a student that did that this year. A student was part-time last year, got a good taste of what it's like to take college level courses, and is in the full-time program this year and doing exceptionally well. So it's not a problem. It's actually a good option for some students that maybe their test scores don't quite meet to get into the two-year program, but then they can get their grades up and so that they can get into the one-year program. Or if they're not quite sure and they want to kind of just take some courses to test the waters first.
Right. I think if it's if you're doing part-time general education courses and then going to a full-time your senior year, that's perfectly fine and makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking though, if you're taking part-time CTE classes as a junior, you might consider continuing on that track for credentials or certificate purposes. So it really depends on what type of part-time program you're taking.
Okay, one question is, what incentive does ECC provide for better SAT scores? So the minimum requirement that students need to meet is that 480 and 530 score. Rodrigo, do you want to say anything more about that?
No, I'm not exactly sure what the incentive is, but I think, yeah, I mean, I think that what I can further elaborate on is that, you know, students also can use their PSAT scores. So you may have taken the SAT score, but if it's within the expiration date or before the expiration date and your PSAT is eligible to get you in based on those cut scores, then we would be accepting the highest of the two exams.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is it possible to get an associate's degree from doing part-time the first year and full-time the second year, or does it have to be a complete full-time both years? In order to finish the associate's degree by the time a student graduates, you need to participate in the full-time program your junior and your senior year. And then another question is, my son has completed accounting 1 and 2 with an A for each semester. Would he still take the dual credit accounting 100 course, intro to accounting, or move on to the next course? So that's a really great question, because this is our first year with accounting 100. So that would be the student's choice to take accounting 100 as a dual credit course, or look to move on to the next level of accounting. But accounting, the next level of accounting is not yet offered at our high schools. Sorry, I'm just resolving these and moving on to the next questions. I think I missed one up at the top here. Are there a limited number of slots for the full-time dual credit program? At this time, we do limit the spots to 15 per grade level.
Per high school.
Per high school, yes. So, and then Mr. Giller, Mr. Peters, can you talk a little bit about the scheduling of placement exams?
With the placement exams being, if they're going to be online again this year, students would schedule those, as Mr. Lopez talked about earlier, through the placement center, and do those individually on their times.
That information, by the way, is also included in the application guide. So when looking to apply, you know, to take or schedule a placement exam, the information is in there. So you can find that on our website.
Thanks. And then the next question is, how does AP credit show up on the ECC transcript?
So that's a really good question. So it doesn't necessarily show up per se on the college transcript, and that's really any college or university. It's noted in a transcript, but the credit is more or less referred to in the degree completion. So as students are looking to complete a degree, depending on the number of credit hours that they're required to complete, those hours that are earned through AP are counted kind of separate from the courses that students completed by sitting in the class. So typically, like any other high school transcript, when your ACTs are kind of noted at the top or at the bottom of the transcript, it's a very similar process for AP scores to show up on a college transcript.
Thank you. The next question is, so for full-time dual credit, there are no high school courses. So students take all of their courses at Elgin Community College for the 2 years of the program. And then the next two questions are about scholarships. So one question just says scholarship, ? And then the next question says, what SAT score is needed to earn an ECC scholarship for the 1 year dual credit program? So Mr. Lopez, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I can answer the question about ACC and scholarships. So high school students right now coming into the dual credit program don't qualify for scholarships, partly because the district itself is paying for your tuition and fees.
Thank you. And then the last question is, would you be able to get an associate's degree doing part-time in the Japanese course? So taking only that course, you wouldn't be able to earn your associate's degree, but you can take those courses as part of the full-time program. And that was the last question. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for our first virtual early college night. And this presentation will be shared with you on the school's website in their college and career readiness websites. Thanks, everybody, and have a great night.